Section 1.6.13. Researchers wanted to test the effectiveness of a new drug therapy for treating patients with bipolar disorder. To do this, they identified 165 patients with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Patients were randomly assigned to one of the three treatment groups. 55 patients were randomly assigned to receive the new drug therapy. Another 55 received the older drug therapy, and the final 55 received the placebo therapy. To measure the effectiveness of the treatment, researchers scored each patient on a standardized rating scale for bipolar disorder. After collecting and comparing the scores for the three treatment groups, the researchers concluded that the new drug therapy is significantly more effective than both the older drug therapy and the placebo therapy in the treatment of bipolar disorder. We're going to complete parts A through F. What type of experimental design is this? Well, the experimental design is based on how the subjects are grouped. Different types of experimental designs and studies are explained below. A completely randomized design is one in which each experimental unit is randomly assigned to a treatment. A matched pairs design is an experimental design in which the experimental units are paired up. The pairs are selected so that they are related in some way, that is, the same person before and after a treatment, twins, husband and wife, same geographical location, and so on. Cohort studies are observational studies that follow a group of individuals over a long period of time. Characteristics of the individuals are recorded, and some individuals will be exposed to certain factors not intentionally, and others will not. Because the data are collected over time, these studies are prospective. Case control studies are retrospective studies, meaning that they require individuals to look back in time or require the researcher to look at existing records. In case control studies, individuals who have certain characteristics may be matched with those who do not. Now, since each experimental unit is randomly assigned a treatment without first grouping or matching the units, we would then say that the experimental design is completely randomized assignment. So the answer is completely randomized design. Next, what is the population being studied? Well, the population is the entire group to be studied. To test the effectiveness of a new drug therapy, the researchers identified 55 patients with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. These 165 patients are considered a sample. A sample is a subset of the population that is being studied. The researchers took a sample of 165 patients from the population of all patients with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. So therefore, it would be all patients with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Part C, what is the response variable in the study? Well, the response variable is the variable that the researchers are observing to see whether it is affected or changes in response to a change in the explanatory variable. First, we identify the explanatory variable. The explanatory variable is the variable that the researchers change. For this experiment, the explanatory variable is the type of therapy received by the patient. Since the researchers compared the score of each patient on a standardized rating scale to measure the effectiveness of the three types of therapy, the score is the response variable. So the score on a standardized rating scale for bipolar disorder. Part D, what are the treatments? The treatments are the different levels of the explanatory variable. Recall that the explanatory variable was identified previously as the type of therapy received by the patient. The patients were randomly assigned into three groups of 55. One group was given the new drug therapy, another group was given the older drug therapy, and the last group was given the placebo therapy. Thus, the treatments are the new drug therapy, the older drug therapy, and the placebo therapy, and therefore it's letter C. Identify the experimental units. An experimental unit is a person, object, or some other well-defined item upon which a treatment is applied. Since each of the 165 patients in the study was treated with one of the three types of therapy, each patient is an experimental unit. Therefore, the 165 patients with a diagnosis of bipolar disorder. Which figure illustrates the design of this experiment? Recall from the previous steps that the experimental design was completely randomized assignment. The treatments were the three different types of therapy, and the response variable is the score on the standardized rating scale. The following figure illustrates the design of the experiment, and that's figure 1.